When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ledlow, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, everybody. This is Mark Ledlow, the host of the Fearless Mindset Podcast. And today I come to you from Las Vegas, not hungover, which is good. We had our private event for a lot of security practitioners for the big conference out here, the ICS, I think West Conference it is. Probably, for some reason, I get that switched around. But all the technology folks are out here. Had a great event at Topgolf, had some partners and clients that were there, had a great time. And today we have a new guest, have not had him on the show, and he comes to us from Virginia. Martin is here to share some wisdom with the audience. He's a former Marine, always a Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine, and spent some time with the FBI, and now he's in security leadership at Smithfield. And we all know about our hot dogs and all that 4th of July food and football tailgating food. So Martin's leading security over there and working with that organization. And I just wanted him to come on board just to share some thoughts, ideas, inspiration, hope to our vets, our law enforcement folks making that transition. And is it possible for the men and women out there to get in corporate security and leadership role? Absolutely. And so I want to have Martin on the show just to share his journey and what he thinks about this thing called corporate security. Martin, welcome to the show. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So what's the day in the life like in your role in a corporate organization like that? Are you looking at budgets? Are you looking at cyber attacks from overseas and people trying to hack in everything and trying to keep everybody, the plants happy, productive, and motivated?
Yeah. So I'm lucky in one regard. I don't have any of the cyber IT threat. So that's one good thing. I came over here. It was a company that's been around, great company, great people, but didn't have much of a security footprint. And so it brought me on and to handle mostly the physical security aspect of it. So my day to day is really culling through intel and information gathering. We use a resource called OnTick at this point, which is our case management and our intel gathering, and we're able to put some Boolean strings together. We're able to do keyword searches and things like that kind of give us an idea of, hey, what's out there, right? And what are we dealing with? And then the other part of the day is really coming up with what the standards of the company are going to look like. What are our minimum security standards? What's our policies going to be? Working with HR, working with legal, working with the communications team to really kind of hone what's best for everybody. And get some standardization across the board. You look at big companies like ours, and over time, a lot of the company individual islands will start to pop up. And so really, how do we bring those islands back under that security standardization, right? And look at those things. So.
Yeah, good shout out to OnTick. Had Lucas on the show a year or so ago before they just blew up. Shout out to Chuck Randolph and Fred Burton and that whole team over there. I had Fred on the podcast several times. And they're doing amazing things over at OnTick, and I know several enterprises that use their product. So it's really amazing product.
Yeah, we're really happy with them. It's like anything else. I have a really small team here. So when I actually transitioned for my first year, I was a team of one.
Oh, really? Wow.
Brand new position, brand new focus for the company. And so I came on and really in that first year did mostly assessment, right? And more of a consulting role almost,
nice.
right? But just because that was all the bandwidth I had, right? And then I started looking at, okay, how do I develop this program? And what are the things that are going to be my pillars of security, for lack of a better term? And so, we talked about OnTick and the information. So obviously in any realm that you want, but specifically security, information's gold, right? That's what you have to have. You've got to be able to discern and take in and distribute information back out. And so that was, number one. Then start looking at things like, hey, where are we on access control? How do we control our facilities? What does that look like? Video surveillance, same thing. What is our footprint there? And then lastly was uniform guard services. How are we going to do that? And then how do I intermesh all four of those types of things to come up with a big strategic security plan that's going to fit for this company? And, we've got plants that are 2 million square feet, have 4,000 workers. And then I've got plants that, probably you could run out of your garage. We have 35 employees. So you've got a real cross section of the manufacturing world for us, and how do we not throw an umbrella out there and say, okay, everybody's got to get under this, and how do we piece it so that we can actually manage what we need to do at each location the best way, but still keep that standard.
So are you guys US based, or are you guys now global? I'm not even sure.
So mostly what I handle right now is just the domestic place. We have a few facilities in other countries that I touch on, but the bulk of my day is spent on the domestic side of what we're doing here.
Now, how has technology really affected your role? Has it helped your role? Has it made things more efficient and more easier, or has it made your role more complex?
I mean, I think a little bit of both, right? You've got a industry that's in manufacturing, but we're in the agriculture, animal agriculture. Sure. So unlike a Yahoo or a Amazon or one of those where technology is going on, we're manufacturing food. We're a food producer. So obviously there's some really good technology out there, but from a security standpoint, we seem to have been very far behind when I came on board. So, I think the technology that's out there has really helped us, but making sure that we have the infrastructure, that's the biggest key for me is, you come up with a great plan and you're like, oh, this whiz bang thing over here is really going to help me from a security function. But then the question is, do I have the infrastructure to put it in place? Do I have the talent, and have I trained the people well enough to use this technology? And so, it's a double-edged sword like anything else, but really, I think without technology, we wouldn't be able to survive. And integration is huge for us. How do I integrate all those different technologies to be as seamless as possible?
Hey, Mark, when you came on the role as, from consultant to chief security officer, was that a hard transition for you? Being a consultant role, now you're a chief security officer, now you become embedded. What did that look like? Because I know there's a lot of people now getting in that role of CISO, and they have a new issue of, finances, working with the C-suite, and all those different corporate issues you had to deal with. What was that transition like? Was it pretty smooth?
So yeah, let me clarify. So when I say I was in a consulting role, I was not a consultant. I was hired as the CSO
Oh, gotcha.
out of the gate. But because I was a one-man show, I filled more of a consulting issue. But to your point, I got here. I came on in November 1st, and so it's the end of the year. Obviously, unlike the government, we work on calendar years budget-wise, not fiscal years. I was here for 3 weeks and was told, "Do you have your budget ready?" I had barely gotten used to where my parking space in my office was, so I'm like, okay, I'm not even really sure what I need yet, right? I didn't inherit a security department. I had to start one. And so, yeah, so it was, hey, can you go get your budget together? And oh, by the way, we need it by Friday. So again, I kind of had in my head what those pillars were of what I talked about. And so I went over, sat with some of the finance people, talked about, hey, how does the company even work? Right? How does the budget flow work? How are we going to do these things? This is what I really envision from a security standpoint. What's our best way forward? And so with that, and really getting a crash course on how the budget cycle within the company works, I was able to kind of come up. So my budget is kind of a hybrid approach to this. I have a corporate budget that I control and I'll spend on different things. I'll even help the plants. But when we come up with the projects for the individual facilities, that project is paid for from that facility. So it's always a negotiation back and forth. Even though it's all coming, I always say it's like a champagne fountain at a wedding, right? It's all coming out of the same bottle, but it's what glass you grab. And so, this week I'm grabbing a glass from facility A, and next week I'm grabbing a glass from facility B, and using their budgets and working with their facility managers to say, okay, let's talk about what our project is. Let's figure out how we can best spend the money for the company, how we can do this. And then, of course, going back to the finance people and trying to make sure it works out best for everybody. So
the security side of things, I always hear, like this year, I heard everybody's tightening, a lot of different organizations. CISOs are tightening down their budgets right now because they don't know what's going to happen with this whole election thing. Nobody really knows how to gauge it or measure it. And so I'm hearing everybody's been slashing budgets across the board. I'm like, oh, really? This is interesting.
Yeah, ours was, and I think again that's a year over year thing, depending on your company as well, too, right? How did we do last year? What is our plan for capital expenditures? Trying to learn all that language, right? I think that going kind of what your theme was of transitioning, right? So in the military, I always remember like, okay, well, it was kind of set, right? And you kind of had your budget. Whereas here, it's almost a fight year over year to almost reestablish that budget. Whereas, in the Marine Corps, the trick was make sure you spend what you were budgeted. Otherwise, your budget dropped to that new level. So you always wanted to get as close as you could. Whereas here, I feel like sometimes we're re-asking every year for a new budget plan, right? And again, of course, in this world, security coming out of the military or out of law enforcement certainly is second nature to everybody, right? Everyone thinks security. It's there all the time. Corporate world, that is not the case, right? They just don't have as much of an understanding because they're bottom line people, and that's what they should be, right? I don't think it's wrong. Our job is to sell product and make as good a profit as we can as while still keeping our prices where we should. So I get that. And security in that role, as you know, revenue generating portion of the company.
Totally true.
And so that alone already puts you in a second tier within the company's infrastructure.
Yeah, I heard one guy explain it to me that he was on a call with the C-suite and CFO and on Zoom or whatever they were. And he said, Mark, here's the Excel spreadsheet. And then he had janitorial service right here. Then he had security below that. We're the last item. Yeah. I'm like, seriously? He goes, yeah. They spend more money in janitorial than they did security. Like, oh, wow. I'm not going to say what company that was due to the NDA stuff and all that, but it was a private conversation with a trusted partner in the industry. And I'm like, whoa, okay. I was wondering.
Well, I'm happy to say we don't necessarily fall in that category, but when you come to corporate security, your job is all of them,
sure.
Right? You've got to be aware of the legal stuff. You've got to be aware of the HR ramifications. And then I think as much as anything, you have to be almost like the communications director, because you're selling the program all the time and trying to explain why this is important, right? We have to continue to educate that, hey, here's the long-term effects of doing or not doing something security related. And how does that tie into the profit-making portion of the company? Whereas in the military and law enforcement, you don't have to do that. And here it is a constant battle. I would say I've been here 3.5 years, and if I've gone a week without having to reformulate an argument or resell something, it would be a miracle, right? So because I'm always hitting somebody, so it's operations or business management or the sales team, or and you're always trying to put that in there.
So it's more of almost as like a sales role, because you have to sell C-suite, CFO, and say, hey, these are my data. This is why we got to do this in the security role. You have to prove it. That's why protective intelligence is so critical, right?
Yeah, and then my favorite question, which is the prove the negative, is, well, with all the money you spent, Martin, how many events have you prevented?
Wow.
I don't know, because they didn't occur. And so did they not occur because I had a guard standing out there and somebody drove by and said, oh, I'm not dealing with that? Or if they got past the guard, were they not able to access my plant because I had good access control in place? So I don't know what I've stopped. And so you're always proving a negative, I think, in at least in my
So in their mind, they're looking at an invisible theory that they want a thesis on from your MBA course on why you're going to do what you do to justify the invoice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I get it, right?
Sure.
And again, that's the part of moving in to this role that I think you're asking about. What's that transition like? Is we have to understand coming into corporate security that it's a sales, right?
Yeah, it is a sales.
If they expect everything to have a solid and apparent and immediate return on investment.
Immediate.
I spent that money, Martin. So what is my return on investment? So, the guys that are making bacon and they need a new slicer, they can say, hey, in 6 months, I'm able to produce this much more pounds of bacon at this cost. So there's your return on investment. We in the security role can't do that. And so I think that's the hard part.
Yeah, we can sell them theories and ideas and current trends, what we think is going to happen.
That's right.
With your your software with OnTick and stuff like that. But
Right.
it's like you said, it's hard to sell, and they get new guys coming in the ranks. A lot of guys are going to start retiring, and the young generation taking over these leadership positions in security in different organizations. They're going to go, holy crap, what did I just inherit here?
Well, especially like here, if you're starting new programs, you don't have that historical data of spend.
Yeah.
So therefore, everything that you're spending is way over the top, right? And they're like, well, what were we spending before? Well, you weren't spending anything before. So now all of a sudden they're like, well, but I was fine back then. Were you? And again, that's where that information comes in, right? So for us, what we try to show through that information gathering, we set up a security incident reporting cycle that we have. And so again, how do I use the information to sell what I'm doing, right? So again, what I can say is, wait a minute, across the company, this is how many incidents we had this past year. This is how many incidents involved law enforcement. This is how many incidents involved drugs. This is how many incidents involved guns. And you try to bring them around, because in the past, I think what was happening, and I think with any company, you get your individual facilities. And so that was a one-off at that facility. But I had 37 one-offs at 37 facilities. Well, that's not a one-off. That is now a trend across the company. So I got to show that trend. Using other data, law enforcement data that's out there. So, year over year statistical reports from crime reports from the FBI or from whoever to say, this is what it is. One of the things we just did recently is workplace violence, right? So using the numbers that the federal government provides of, hey, here's how much workplace violence cost industry in 2022 or 2023. Using those numbers are big for us, being able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that goes back to the data, the numbers, improving those numbers too. Yeah, CFO, and because usually it's the CFO and the general counsel that approved a budget, right? Is that kind of how that works in that end? Okay.
Yeah.
And then they get
absolutely. Yeah, and so you're always fighting with them, and then like anything else, I work for the chief manufacturing officer. So basically that's our, basically chief operations officer. Right. And so, I'm coming to him with my budget request, and at the same time, so is everybody else. So, he's trying to rack and stack all the capital expenditures, okay, well, do we need to replace the smoker in this place, or do we need to put in a new access control system of doors? So we're always competing of who's going to spend next. And I think our company has a very good approach at that. And I like the way it comes out, which is that the next best $1 million we're going to spend?
right.
Right. And I think that's a fair approach. I think that's a thoughtful approach of, okay, what do we need right now? And, and then, okay, what's the long-term effects from those decisions? So it's a thoughtful approach, and I like it.
Here's another theory that I have. I talked to a lot of people that, the industry is really slow right now in security. No one's spending any money. So my natural response to many of the colleagues in the industry that are boutique security companies like mine, I tell them, we're dealing with inflation right now. Think of the cost of groceries right now. Everybody's grocery bill has doubled, if not tripled, in the last year or so. And it's just not really been fun for a lot of people. And being a corporation, you're in business to make profit. And you have inflation coming in there going, ouch, this kind of stings. That dollar bill became 25 cents with inflation.
Yeah, it is. but that's where, I think you have to have that broad view approach, right? So this year, the same thing with us, right? I mean, I've had my boss come back and say, hey, we need to roll back a little bit on some of these initiatives. Okay. So, so for us, all right, so we're not going to do the installations. We may not do this, but I can still do the surveys that will help get the numbers for next year's budget so we can put them into the budget. I can get my auditing done, right? Let's go out, let's do site surveys. Let's look at the individual plants. Let's talk about a strategy of what we need to have in place. Hey, let's look at this door. How come I'm able to open this from the outside? So there's all sorts of things. What kind of training do we do? Hey, can we focus on active assailant training? What does our liaison with local law enforcement look like? Have we invited them out, right? Because that's something I noticed on both sides, right? Is that when I was in the FBI, I was at a place where there was a shooting at a big manufacturing facility, and the loss of valuable time to get in because there was not that coordination beforehand, right? It's not like going into a house. You're coming into a manufacturing facility. There's lots of moving parts in there that are not at other places or an office building. So, what can we do in these bad budget cycles or inflation periods to really shore up our security strategy? And those are the things, right? Let's get law enforcement in here. Let's give them a tour of our plant. Let's give them the floor plans. Let's talk about, joint training, that kind of stuff. And doesn't cost me anything. So I'm able to get some other stuff done. So that's what we look at.